Well, look, it's a joy to be here. Just to add my own welcome to you all. As you've heard, my name's Fr Stephen Wang, and I'm the senior chaplain here at Newman House. And it's just absolutely wonderful to see so many of you here this evening, and just to give you a very, very warm welcome. Now, I've been getting mixed messages. Dexter told me to keep it short, because he wants you to be out to your food as soon as possible. And then Hannah said keep it long because the cow isn't cooked yet. So I don't quite know where we're going to end up, whether Hannah is going to come and... It is cooked. OK, well, I'll better stop now then. Okay. Back to Dexter's instruction. Anyway, medium length. Don't worry, I'm not going to keep you too long because I know we're all hungry, myself included. But just to share a few thoughts for the beginning of this academic year, which we're all sharing now. I'm conscious that not all of you, but many of you are from abroad. And I just thought I'd tell you one story of English Christianity to help you to appreciate the faith of this country that you're in, and even for the English students, if you don't know this yet. And also to help you appreciate that the story of our faith in this country is much more than just the Reformation. That's a big part of recent history, but it's much more than that. And I want to tell you about St Alban, and then to draw out a few thoughts from his life that I hope will be relevant for us. So St Alban, if you don't know, is our first martyr here in this country. And indeed, he's our first recognised saint. So a man of huge significance for us here in England and the UK. His dates are disputed. Many people traditionally have said that he's from the early 300s, but there's some quite good evidence to say that his death could have been as early as the year 209, which makes him just a few generations after the life of Jesus and the first Christian missionaries. So let me just tell you the story, because most of you probably don't. Well, can I ask, how many know the story of St Alban? 3, 4. OK, it's worth telling it then. So Alban was a Roman soldier in the Roman town of Verulamium, which is now called St Albans. And this is not far away. It's about 30 miles north of London where we are, on the old Roman road, in fact, the A5, going straight north from London. It's just 20 minutes on the train, so I hope you can visit, and you're inspired to visit after this story, and maybe we can have a chaplaincy pilgrimage there. Yes, Hannah lives there, I've forgotten. That's why she put her hand up. So it's a very beautiful, ordinary commuter town at the moment, and it's where I grew up. I grew up in a little town called Harpenden, just north of St Alban. So here we are in the beginning of the 3rd century, perhaps. It's a Roman world, it's a pagan world. The Christian message has not really penetrated this society. But there are 1 or 2 Christian priests. One of them, called Amphibolus, that's his traditional name anyway, and we presume that these priests were missionaries, were doing quiet missionary work in this pagan society. There was a time, it wasn't always, but there came about a time of persecution, and Amphibolus was afraid for his life. For some reason that we don't know, Alban, the pagan Roman soldier, felt moved to hide this priest. Alban had no faith. It was presumably just an act of human kindness for someone suffering, persecuted. In those days, while this priest was hiding in Alban's home, he saw the priest praying, keeping vigil, living his faith very, very quietly and simply. And Alban was moved by his example. There was something about this priest and his Christian way of life. Eventually, they started to talk more, and Alban questioned him. Listening, talking, sharing his life, learning about the priest's life. And over those days of real intimacy and dialogue and honesty, there was a gradual conversion in the soul of this tough Roman soldier. Eventually, Alban asked for baptism. And this was, of course, a turning point in his life. So here was a fugitive priest and a newly baptised Christian soul. At a particular moment, word got around that the priest might have been hiding here, and there was a search. The Roman soldiers came to knock at the house. Alban helped the priest to escape out the back, and to give him extra time to get away, Alban took the cloak of the priest, disguised himself as the priest, went to the door and said, "Here I am." He was taken away as if he were the priest, and his identity was only discovered hours later when the priest had had time to escape. Alban put himself in harm's way. He put himself in the place of the priest to save his life. He was brought to the judge. He was pressured to renounce his new faith, and there and then he was asked to offer pagan sacrifice to free himself. Otherwise, he was threatened he would be punished with the same punishments that the priest would have been punished with if he had been captured. Alban refused resolutely, and he said, and I'm quoting from the early documents, he said to the judge, "I worship and adore the true and living God who created all things." He was tortured in a final effort to get him to renounce his faith, and he didn't. So he was taken from the Roman city across the river Ver, which is still flowing through the city, up the hill, and on the top of the hill he was beheaded there. Devotion to Alban developed. A church was built. By the 8th century there was a monastery there, which was sacked by the Vikings. It was rebuilt by the Normans in the 11th century, and by the High Middle Ages, by the 15th, 16th century, it had become one of the greatest and largest monasteries in the country. In the Reformation, being such an important shrine, an important monastery, it was one of those shrines that was targeted for destruction. But by a happy twist of fate, very recently, in the last few years, the Anglican Cathedral, which it's become, has chosen to rebuild the shrine of St Alban, restoring the very medieval ruins that had been built. And the most beautiful part of the restoration was that in 2002, a true relic of St Alban, one of his bones, which had been preserved in safety in a church in Cologne, was given by that church from Germany to England and was restored into its rightful place in the shrine of St Alban. So when you go to visit that shrine today, you know that you're honouring not just a restored shrine, but the presence of Alban, as it were, through his own shrine that's been restored there today. So a wonderful story, and I hope, if nothing else, that inspires you and is just food for thought. But let me draw out for us, as we begin this academic year together, 3 particular thoughts that I hope are helpful. The first thought: look at the pattern of Alban's journey of faith, because it says something to each of us. In those few days when he was hiding the priest, first, there's just the kindness of welcoming him into his home. There's the listening and the curiosity and the openness of heart to this stranger. And then, as they talk more, there's growing to love what he saw and heard in this man and in his witness. And there's not just learning and growing and loving, there is the step of commitment, of becoming baptised. And then, finally, the witness of life, even at great cost, and even at the cost of his life in martyrdom. This is the pattern, I think, that seems true for anything important in our lives, and particularly for our faith, and for your own journey of faith over this year or these years at university. I hope you can see how that pattern applies to your life. For you to be open to others, kind, curious, all the opportunities there are in so many different ways to listen and learn from others. And then that listening and learning grows into a genuine love, that it's the heart as well as the head. It's about a relationship and not just something that you've learnt in a book or learnt in a conversation. And then that what you're hearing and the ways that you're growing take on in your faith a very real commitment. You can't just be a fellow traveller in faith. It takes you to step out, to say yes, to stand up for what you know is important in your heart, and to make that important not just in the inner recesses of your heart, but in your life and in your commitments and your way of life and your relationships. That you stand up for what is important, that you speak about what you truly believe, because it matters, because if it's important to you, it will be important to other people as well. And then, like St Alban, I hope not suddenly, but perhaps gradually, you realise more and more that there is a cost to this faith and this commitment. There is a sacrifice, and it won't always be easy. The cost of time, the cost of getting up in the morning, the cost of speaking when you don't want to speak, of perhaps holding your tongue when you do want to sometimes, the cost of your reputation, the cost of your inconvenience, ultimately the cost of you loving the Lord and loving others. Alban's life is a model for us. He didn't ask to be a hero, as it were, but the call to heroism came to him unwanted and unchosen, and it comes to us in small ways and perhaps in big ways in this time at university. So the second thought is not about Alban, it's about what happened to the Roman city of Verulamium. You can still visit this city, the ruins. It was down in the valley next to the river, and you can walk around those ruins today, and there is a wonderful Roman museum with some of the finest domestic Roman mosaics in this country. But the new city of St Albans, on the train line, the medieval city, is not built on the ruins of the Roman city, but up the hill. Why? Well, you can guess. It's built around the shrine of St Alban himself. His burial place, the early shrine, the church, the abbey. And over many centuries, for all sorts of complicated historical reasons, I'm not pretending this is simple, but over many centuries and for many different reasons, the desire of the people of that city to be closer to the shrine of Alban. The city grew, but it didn't just grow, it became displaced. There was not an attack by Christians on the pagan city of Verulamium, on this ancient city, that turned a pagan city into a Christian one. But very gradually, over many centuries, people saw something in the life of Alban, and in the vision of Christian life that he represented. They were attracted to it. It drew them in a way that perhaps they couldn't understand. It drew them to prayer. It drew them to this way of life. It drew them physically to live more closely to this man and to all that he represented, and to build their community and their whole way of life around his shrine and the way of life he witnessed to. The centre of gravity of a whole culture shifted because of this inner attraction. This is true for us today. Those of you who know me know that I am not anti the modern world by any means. There are many wonderful things about our culture, but some aspects of our culture in general and of the university environment in particular, can be profoundly un-Christian, even anti-Christian. I'm not over-dramatising. There are many good things, but there are many ambiguities as well. And the growth of the city of St Albans is an example to us of one approach of how to face this culture, I think. In other words, not to confront the culture head-on, but to live within it, as you do, lovingly, patiently, within your departments, your universities, your halls of residence. You're there, you're part of this culture. But living within it lovingly and patiently, to offer an alternative culture side by side, a larger vision of what human life is about, to overcome the materialism implicit in so many university departments, the commodification of the human person, the limited spiritual horizons. Instead, quietly, lovingly, to put God's love at the very centre of your life and your lifestyle. The dignity of each human person to be the foundation of your life, of our ethics, of our laws. The beauty of holiness in your life and the life of your friends. And ultimately, the promise of eternal life after death that you are living for. This is what Pope Benedict said when he visited us and spoke in Westminster Hall 4 years ago. That secular rationality and religious faith are not enemies. They're meant to be in dialogue and mutual support. And the distinctive role of religious faith is to help purify reason and rationality, in case it falls prey to distortions or ideologies and loses sight of the central truths that there are about God and about the human person. So that's the second thought, the shift of culture, the moving of a city. And my third and final thought from the story of St Alban is just to finish on a personal note, not because I particularly want to, but because Dexter asked me to, and I'm always very obedient to the Cathsoc committees. So I lived in Harpenden, and I went to school in St Albans for my senior school. And my school, the Abbey School, St Albans School, is built on the ruins of the medieval abbey. And we would have assemblies in the medieval cathedral, the Abbey Church, which is built on St Alban's shrine. When I started at that school aged 11, I was a convinced atheist. And part of the slow process of conversion that took place over those 6 and 7 years took place in that cathedral. Just to give one example, a particular moment that I still remember. We were in an assembly, not a particularly religious one, but we would have religious readings now and then. And I remember hearing for the first time the prologue, the first few lines of St John's Gospel being read out to us in that school assembly. Those words, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And then a few lines later, "The Word became flesh and dwelt amongst us." At that time, I think I was aged 16, I had absolutely no faith. I wasn't interested in this strange thing called Christianity at all. But something about those words struck me. It was more than just struck me. Something about those words entered my soul, even though I didn't know I had a soul. It was as if I was not just hearing something, but I was being spoken to. That someone I didn't know was speaking to me directly and personally. There was a truth about those words, a power in the words of Scripture. It shook me and unsettled me and unnerved me. It opened just a crack in the doorway, enough for a light breeze to enter in, a light, just a shaft of light. I won't bore you with the whole of my story. You can ask me over whatever we're eating if you want to hear it. But it was being taken to Mass for the first time with some Catholic friends. It was learning gradually about the Catholic faith. It was taking those first baby steps in prayer very nervously when I was 17. It was having a conversion that took many more days than St Alban had with that priest. And ultimately it was being received into the Catholic Church when I was 19, and on Palm Sunday having my first Holy Communion in the church in Harpenden. But as I look back on that story many years later, I like to think that St Alban was part of that conversion in a way that I didn't know at the time. That there I was in the presence of him, this great saint, in the holiness, the sanctuary, the oasis of that shrine, the abbey, and supported quietly by the prayers of this great saint. This was just my own particular journey. Every one of you has a different journey. I pray for each one of you that this time of university will be a journey in faith in your own unique way. No journey is the same. Each one of you is unique. Your life is unrepeatable, but there are wonderful moments ahead of you. The Lord is with you. He loves you. The prayers of the saints and of St Alban are with you, and they love you, and they love us all, and they care for us. And I pray that your journey will unfold, maybe quietly, maybe very dramatically, but that the Lord will lead you closer to him and closer to his church. Thank you very much.